The film begins by showing the underwater city that we already know, Bikini Bottom. As usual, Sandy came out of her greenhouse and then began to sing along with her beloved horse, as well as the citizens of Bikini Bottom including SpongeBob, Patrick, Larry, Mr. Crab, and others. Sandy ends up singing in front of SpongeBob's house. Soon SpongeBob approaches Sandy to demonstrate his jellyfish catching skills. But suddenly Sandy gets a warning sign of danger. And sure enough, a giant creature came from the sky and began to dredge the entire city of Bikini Bottom. The three of them managed to survive, but not with Bikini Bottom residents who could not save themselves, including Patrick and Gary. So Sandy and SpongeBob can't do anything about it. Before the monsters disappeared, Sandy had time to find out about from all this. What turned out to be the mastermind was an organization called Boots, which is a marine animal research site that comes from Texas. Of course, it makes Sandy surprised because the organization is where Sandy works researching science. Sandy then tries to contact Boots. At first Sandy managed to contact him, but suddenly a promotional video of a water playground shared by Tsunami appeared. When Sandy asked, the identity of the Tsunami communication was suddenly cut off. The disappearance of the city of Bikini Bottom makes SpongeBob very sad because he lost all his friends. Sandy promises to help Bikini Bottom. But before that they have to figure out how to get to Texas quickly. But Sandy got an idea. They swam quickly using glacier bursts.
Watch this!
Sandy immediately carefully calculated all the possibilities for them to get to Texas. In the end, Sandy and SpongeBob immediately go to the surface with the help of glacier spray. They both eventually made it to the surface, and even a burst of glacier brought them to the top of the plane. But SpongeBob is having trouble because he needs water. But Sandy managed to overcome it with his water spray to SpongeBob. 14 hours later they finally reached Texas, and had to disembark immediately. Having no other choice, Sandy decided to jump from the plane. And lucky Sandy is a squirrel that can fly, so they can land safely. But just as they were about to reach the lab, a tornado appeared that made them both have to be blown away from the landing site. Long story short, they both bounced far enough that Sandy was shocked that there was no other choice but to walk in the middle of the Texas desert to get to Lab Boots. On the way, SpongeBob wondered why the city of Bikini Bottom was taken. But Sandy still could not answer the question. On the other hand, Mr. Crab along with others hid in the Krusty Krab out of fear. Even they all didn't know what was going on. This made Mr. Crab finally go out to check around. Mr. Crab had met Gary and Patrick, who were wandering outside, and Mr. Crab immediately told them to go home. But while continuing the journey, Mr. Crab was surprised by a huge human figure. And now the residents of Bikini Bottom have been placed in the aquarium. The woman's name is Tibby and she has a friend named Kyle. They then checked the number of Bikini Bottom residents. And according to data on the computer, it turns out that Bikini Bottom residents lost 2 citizens who were none other than Sandy and SpongeBob. Knowing that Bikini Bottom residents are missing, their boss named Tsunami is angry. And before that he fed the fish the results of his seemingly terrible biological research. On Lai's side, Sandy and SpongeBob's journey must be hindered because they are blocked by several snakes to eat them. Sandy tries to fight back with his karate moves. But he ended up being bitten, making Sandy's body become swollen. Being cornered, Sandy also asked for help from none other than his family in Texas. Finally, the father and Sandy's big family named Chicks fought the snakes and finally managed to defeat them all. Sandy introduces SpongeBob to her family and they think of him as a talking cheese. Sandy's family would then take them to go attend the carnival. In the middle of the road, Sandy tells her family that she must go to Lab Boots to save her friends in the town of Bikini Bottom. Hearing the problem, his family also wanted to help take them to get to the Lab Boots. Meanwhile, the Tsunami in the lab is furious that the most important subject in the SIPL project, SpongeBob, has disappeared. The SIPL project itself is a project that will make all marine animals, especially Bikini Bottom residents, become pets that children can have. And they also have prepared tools to make marine animals into large numbers. After that, Tsunami asked his workers to immediately find SpongeBob.
Production value.
It's a great video.
On the way, SpongeBob talks to one of Sandy's family named Rendy. Which is to say, if Sandy has different ideals than his family who are members. Then their conversation was stopped because the car engine had a problem that required them to fix it. Sandy herself, even though she wanted to be a scientist, her family still supported what Sandy wanted. On the other hand, Plankton, who heard the cloning tool belongs to humans, intends to have it to rule the world. But because of Karen's words, Plankton realized that it was impossible. Meanwhile, the citizens of Bikini Bottom made very happy because the city suddenly raining candy. So they all ate sweets until they were full. When all the inhabitants of Bikini Bottom are caught off guard, Tibby begins to capture Patrick, Mr. Crab, and Squidward. To continue the trial to the next phase, they were put in a device that allowed the three of them to breathe without water. The three of them are then placed in a replica of SpongeBob's house. And the Tsunami put them in a jar. After that, two boys were sent to test the Chapal project that had been carried out by Patrick, Mr. Crab, and also Squidward. Returning to Sandy's family, they get into trouble because the police car is behind and is about to tickle them. But Rendy did not want to stop and tried to escape. But unfortunately, they even got into a tornado that once made Sandy bounce. So did the police who boarded the other tornado to chase them. Luckily for Sandy, they managed to escape. But the problem is not over yet. Because police reinforcements are coming. Because it is almost there, Sandy's father has a plan to bring Sandy on time by using a cannon. Finally, with his father Sandy's idea, they managed to get to the Boots lab, which was on the water ride.
I hate what chlorine does to my...
After that, Sandy tried to find Lab Boots, but unfortunately he didn't find it. But soon Tsunami's dog sees them both and chases after them. They both climbed up the slide and finally managed to find the location of Lab Boots. Sandy jumped and flew to the location, but the dog also flew to catch them. Sandy, who was not out of his mind, finally managed to make the dog cannot chase them anymore. After that, they go into the sewers to get into the Lab Boots. But while in the ditch, the dog was still trying to chase them both until finally the water appeared, which led them to the Lab Boots. Inside, SpongeBob finally sees the city of Bikini Bottom, which is already inside a very large aquarium. SpongeBob is reunited with Gary. He also meets Patrick, Mr. Crab, and Squidward. But their meeting did not last long because SpongeBob was finally caught by lab workers. Sandy eventually meets Tsunami, who is the mastermind of the highly inhuman Chapal project. Upset, Sandy tries to fight the Tsunami, but unfortunately Sandy loses and ends up locked up in a hamster cage. To his surprise, both Tibby and Kyle are Sandy's friends. Sandy also wondered why her two friends obeyed the Tsunami more. After that, SpongeBob finally put on a roller coaster that will take him into the cloning tool. Here we finally know if the reason tsunamis do it all to marine animals is when they are still small. Nami wants to be able to have a pet sea animal that can be hugged. But it cannot be realized because marine animals must continue to be in the water. After that, Nami opened her identity, whose full body had turned into a robot. So far, Nami has used Sandy to spy on Bikini Bottom so that the Chapal project can succeed. So SpongeBob and others who heard it were sad, including Sandy, who deeply regretted his actions. In the end, SpongeBob got into the cloning machine and the machine started working. So SpongeBob finally divided into small parts. But Nami's dog came and made the cloning device fall. So SpongeBob SquarePants. One SpongeBob approaches Sandy and tries to encourage her. So Sandy finally got excited to save Bikini Bottom and the residents. Not only that, the head of the workers finally realized SpongeBob's words were very touching. And finally in favor of Sandy versus Tsunami. Sandy with a hamster wheel finally managed to escape and fight Nami until her head was removed from her robot body. But even so, Nami is still happy because now she is a fish, which is her dream since childhood. On the other hand, SpongeBob eventually returns to being whole by combining all parts of his little body. The problem has not ended there, because the aquarium finally fell and cracked, which made Sandy and SpongeBob have to immediately bring Bikini Bottom to the sea before the water runs out. They then asked Sandy's family for help, but unfortunately the aquarium was too heavy. At the end of the day, they all suck. And they finally managed to bring Bikini Bottom back into the sea. You have to go to space first. The next day, Sandy's family performs in front of the citizens of Bikini Bottom. To celebrate their success, save the citizens and also the city of Bikini Bottom. After that, the film ends.